Hi, I'm Cameron Collins. I'm a teacher at Groves High School, and today I'm going to be going over the start of the Cold War. This is going to be Standard 20 of the Georgia Standards of Excellence, and this as part of the United States curriculum. And so this standard, it says that we are to analyze U.S. international and domestic policies, including their influences on technological advancements and social changes during the Truman and Eisenhower administrations. So what we're going to be looking at is we're going to try to be pulling apart what's going on around the world, as well as what's going on at home, and how those are going to influence our changes in technology, our changes in the way people work together, how they're living their lives under the administrations of President Truman and of President Eisenhower. And so the first thing we need to understand is, what is the Cold War? So the Cold War is a competition between the United States and Soviet Union after World War II. The reason why it is called a Cold War is because we're not going and actually physically fighting the Soviet Union. We are going to be going and fighting them on an ideological basis. We're going to be fighting communism. Remember, the United States is a capitalist country. We follow capitalism, the idea that you should be free to pursue wealth as you wish, to have greater freedoms, whereas communism is more about the government controlling the means of production, the government ensuring equality of wealth. And so we're going to be stepping up after World War II to defend our ideals, our belief in capitalism, and try to either defeat or at least stop the spread of communism. We can see in the picture here kind of how that was seen, right? We've got Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union kind of grabbing up parts of Europe. And then we have our allies on the West. And so we are going to be under this feeling of threat that communism is just going to keep gobbling countries up, and that eventually it's going to come to us. So we want to stop that, and that's where the Cold War is going to begin. We can't go and just wipe out the Soviet Union because we both have nuclear weapons. If we try to wipe them out, they would wipe us out. And so we're going to have to go and have an unconventional war, something a little bit different. This is going to play out differently than wars in the past. And it's going to shape how our country navigates the future. And so the first element we're going to look at is element A, to analyze the international policies and actions developed as a response to the Cold War, including containment, the Marshall Plan, the Truman Doctrine, and the Korean War. So again, we're trying to break apart these international policies that are in response to the Cold War, in a response to this competition between the United States and the Soviet Union, and how these different parts work together to demonstrate how we are navigating the Cold War, how we're responding to this threat. And so the first thing we need to understand is, what is the containment policy? And so the containment policy is quite literal, but what's important to remember is, what are we trying to contain, right? So containment policy is about keeping communism where it already is. Remember, communism and the countries that have communism are being supported by the Soviet Union. And so any country that has become communist typically gets the support of the Soviet Union. And if we are to address them, then that means that we are in some ways threatening the Soviet Union. That becomes a possible nuclear conflict. And so we can't really eliminate communism where it already is. So our best option is to contain it, to stop it from spreading, to keep it where it already is. And so a lot of our containment policy is going to focus on keeping it where it already exists. And where it exists at the time, after World War II, is going to be in in Eastern Europe and in Southeast Asia. And so we're going to try to stop it from spreading. We're going to try to stop it from spreading to Japan. We're going to try to stop it from spreading to Australia. We're going to try to stop it from spreading to Western Europe, to Western Germany, to France, to Great Britain. And so we're going to try to keep it where it already is. We're going to try to contain communism, stop it from spreading, so that it does not eventually get to us. Because the idea is that when communism spreads, it is almost like pieces in a domino set, where domino falls over, knocks another one over, and it just keeps going until they all fall down. We see ourselves as the domino at the end, that if communism continues to spread, that dominoes are going to fall, that country after country will fall to communism, and eventually it will fall to us. Right? Now, that idea is known as the domino theory. And so to stop these dominoes from falling, to stop these countries from falling to communism, we're going to try to contain it. And so why is it so important to contain communism? Is because we see it as a threat to our way of life, that our very existence, that our very being is tied up in capitalism. Our freedom to start a business, to pursue wealth however we wish. And so this idea of the government taking over the means of production, taking over our wealth, that is seen as an existential threat to the very foundations of the United States. And so we want to stop it. We want to stop that spread. We're going to try to contain it so that it never reaches the United States, so that it never falls on us. And so one of the policies that we're going to use as a means of containing communism is going to be the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan is going to be mainly about supporting Western Europe. We're going to give money to these countries because what we find out is that when countries become desperate, when countries become financially unstable, when their people are hungry, they don't have the means to take care of themselves, that's when they start looking for something new. If a country and its people decide, hey, maybe capitalism isn't working for us, they may turn to communism. That's part of what happened in Russia in 1917. That's part of what's going to happen in China in 1949. When people decide, hey, maybe it's time to start or try something new, and they fall to communism. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give money directly to the people of Western Europe, to France, to Britain, to Western Germany, so that these people have the money to take care of themselves, to support themselves, to get on their feet so they can take care of their own selves in the future, and they don't fall to communism. Because remember, a lot of times these countries, it's not that they necessarily are dying for communism. It is because they were put in a position where they felt that they needed to try something new, such as communism. And so to stop that from happening, we're going to give money directly to these people so that they have the financial means to support themselves and so that they remain capitalists and remain our allies. Because remember, we're going to see each of these countries as pieces in a domino set. And to stop those pieces from falling, we're going to give them the support they need so that they are stable and they don't pursue communism. So next we have the Truman Doctrine. Now, of course, here we have a picture of President Harry Truman, and his doctrine is going to be, we will help any country fighting against communism. We will help if you are a country or a group of people who fears communism, that is under threat from communism, we will provide you the means to support yourselves and to defend yourselves against communism. And so two places that's going to play out is in Greece and in Turkey. When they became under threat from communism, from the Soviet Union, we're going to supply them with the resources that they needed to remain strong, remain financially stable, to defend themselves against communism, rather than us having to send our own troops. Now, in the future, it may turn in other countries around the world, we may turn to sending our troops, but we're going to go and do our best that wherever in the world, if you are a country fighting against communist aggression, we will support you to ensure that you don't become communist if you feel that you cannot support yourself on your own. And so these two plans working together, the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine, giving money to Western Europe and responding to any country who needs support against communism. By these two plans working together, they will help contain communism, to support these countries that do not want to become communist and prevent it from spreading to new countries, to ensure that communism stays where it's at and that it does not ever reach us, that communism does not reach the United States. Because as long as it's contained to where it already is, we feel it is less likely to reach us, it is less likely to be a threat to us. Now, unfortunately, we cannot always contain communism. Remember, communism is an idea, and that becomes, ideas can be particularly dangerous as they can be difficult to contain. And so in 1949, we're going to see another major country fall to communism. Remember, in 1917, we had Russia fall to communism and become the Soviet Union, and this is going to terrify the United States. This is going to cause the first Red Scare, when we felt that major countries around the world may fall to communism and that it could eventually lead to us. And so when China in 1949 also falls to communism, we're going to again feel very threatened, feel very pressured to do something about communism, because now not only do we have the Soviet Union, which is a large, powerful country being communist, we now have China, which has a ton of resources, a ton of people, and they are going to ally themselves with the Soviet Union. This is going to increase the pressure we feel, increase the threat that we feel, that countries are falling into communism and that our way of life is under threat, that eventually communism may come to us. And so we are going to see this play out where these two countries are going to, they're going to kind of flex their muscle a little bit, show that they are communist comrades working together against capitalism. Here we've got a cartoon. We have the person on the left representing the Soviet Union, the person on the right representing China. We have the red background. Remember, red is going to be the color of communism at this time. And so they are holding hands together in strength and unity, showing that they are united against capitalism, against us. And so again, this is going to be tremendously frightening for the United States, as it seems like we're losing. It feels as though we're losing, as we have the Soviet Union being our main competitor, with China now falling. It could mean that more countries are going to continue falling into communism. And so we're going to try to really step up our efforts to stop communism from spreading, to ensure that capitalism is safe around the world. And this is going to take place really openly in the Korean War. So how this starts is, after World War II, Korea is going to be split. Korea had been colonized by Japan. Japan had taken over Korea for many years. And so after World War II, when Japan is pushed back to its island nation, we're going to go, Korea is going to split in two. Communists are going to take over the north. Capitalists are going to take over the south. And what's going to happen is the North Koreans are going to want to unify Korea. They don't want North and South Korea. They want one Korea. And so the communists in North Korea are going to invade South Korea to try to unify the country under communism. And so, of course, they're going to receive support from the Soviet Union and China, or the Soviet Union as a competitor in the Cold War, representing communism. They're going to want the spread of communism as well. And so Soviet Union and China are going to support the North. And when this war begins, when our allies in the South are invaded by North Korea and its allies, we're going to join this conflict. We're going to join the Korean War to support our Southern allies, to support capitalism. And the way the war is going to play out is North Korea is going to invade the South, and South Korea is going to be under threat, and we're going to support our allies. We're going to get into Korea, and we're going to invade the North, and we're going to push them back. And once again, China is going to step up, and China is going to push us to where we have this stalemate, right? We're going to have this division. And so Korea, at the end of the Korean War, is going to remain divided. We're still going to have a North and South Korea, as it is to this day, a communist North and a capitalist South. But this represents the first time that we enter a conflict on behalf of our capitalist allies, that we are fulfilling the Truman Doctrine, that if you need support from communist aggression, we will be there. This was the first time that we are going to support our capitalist allies, but it's not going to be the last during the Cold War. And so what we're going to look at now is element B of Standard 20. And this is going to be connecting major domestic issues to their social effects, including the GI Bill, Truman's integration policies, McCarthyism, the National Interstate and Defense Highways Act, and Brown versus Board of Education. And so what we're going to be trying to do is we're going to try to connect the government policies to the effects that they're going to have on our technology, on our society, and how they work together. And so first thing we're going to look at is the GI Bill. Now, the GI Bill is going to be designed to reward our veterans and to incentivize new recruits. Because remember, while this is a Cold War, it is a conflict. It is a time in which we feel under threat. So we need new blood. We need new recruits into our military to grow our forces, to ensure that we are strong in case this Cold War becomes a hot war, an open conflict, a larger conflict that really does have our existence at stake. And so what the GI Bill is going to do is it is going to give money to those returning home, give money to our veterans so that they can pay for homes and education. And now what this is going to do is veterans are going to come home and they're going to start buying houses. And what this is going to do is, now that these veterans have houses, well, first of all, you're giving money to realtors, to people who own these homes, to builders. These veterans are going to be spending money on home improvements. They're going to be, buying new appliances. They may want to paint the walls. They may want to change their whole house. And every time they spend a dime on anything that they're doing, they are stimulating the economy. They are creating jobs. And so what this is going to do is, by providing this money to our veterans, by pumping this money into our economy through the veterans and the spending that they're doing, this is going to prop up our economy, make us stronger, create jobs, and this is going to help create this boom in the 1950s of people, large numbers of people being employed. People, our standard of living is going to rise as more jobs are created, as more wealth is created, and we become more wealthier and stronger. And so now on top of that, it is also going to pay for education. And so now that these veterans are coming home, now they're going to be able to go to college. And what that means is they're going to be able to get this education, and they're going to get better jobs. And with these better jobs, they're going to be able to have more money. And once again, this is going to stimulate the economy even further as we have these veterans becoming these engineers and scientists and board directors and all these different positions which help our society, help our economy as they make more money and they contribute in research and their spending. And so again, the GI Bill, while it is on one hand a reward for those serving in our military, it is going to serve a fundamental part of stimulating the economy, of ensuring that our economy is strong and going during this time, and is going to propel the United States not only to have this strong, vibrant economy, but also support our efforts in the Cold War by being a model for success around the world. Now, even though we have this strong economy, we do have our issues. We do have segregation still going on. And so we have to address this. The Soviet Union is going to be keen to point out that in the United States, African Americans were being mistreated, that segregation existed, that there were people in the United States being treated as second-class citizens. Now, President Truman did not have the position to end segregation entirely, but he is going to use his position to end segregation where he has power, where he has control. And what President Truman is going to do is he is going to integrate the military. And this will be done for a few reasons. Now, one, segregation is going to be used against us. Okay? Segregation is going to be used by the Soviet Union as a reason that countries should be communist, to avoid capitalism, because the Soviet Union is going to say, look at the United States, look at how they treat their citizens. You don't want to be a part of this. And so to address this criticism of the United States and of capitalism, we're going to remove segregation from our armed forces, from our military, so that people of all races can work and fight together in our military to show that we are a people united, so that we don't have this blemish on us. Now, you're also going to have integration reducing tension. So now you don't have white units and black units. You're going to have everybody working together. And so people are going to be forced to bond, to get to know one another, and this is going to reduce tension between forces, between white groups and black groups. Now that they're working together, they're going to get to know each other, and there's going to be less of that tension of people who don't know each other, who are not together. And the last one, we're going to have more people enlisting in the military, because prior to Truman's integration, you are going to have people who say, I don't want to join the military because of how they treat African Americans. I don't want to join the military because it supports segregation. Remember, segregation is going to be mainly throughout the South, and so you may have people in other parts of the country who say, why is our military segregation? I don't believe in segregation. I don't want to be a part of a military that supports segregation. So by removing that roadblock, you are going to have more people of all races going and joining the military as you remove this obstacle, remove segregation from our military, and open it up to more people. Next, we're going to have the second Red Scare. And now the second Red Scare, this is really going to be, this is going to coincide with China falling to communism and the Korean War. Because again, when we have these large countries like the Soviet Union, like China falling to communism, it feels like large dominoes, big pieces are falling, and that communism is becoming closer and closer to us, that our day to fall to communism comes closer and closer. And so what this is going to do is people throughout the United States, everyday citizens, there's going to be a sense of fear, of threat. And this is going to affect how we see the world, how we see our neighbors. You're going to have some people living next to each other for years become suspicious that their neighbor may be communist. And this is going to affect how we live and interact with one another. This is going to affect how we vote. When we look at politicians, are they fighting against communism? Are they protecting us from communism? And that's going to manifest itself in the ways we vote, who we support, and how we're living our lives. And part of that is going to be this play out by Senator Joseph McCarthy and become known as McCarthyism. Now, Senator McCarthy is going to use his position to try to weed out communists within our country. Anybody who he believes may be a communist, he's going to investigate and hold hearings and basically publicly shame people who he believes may be communist. And this is going to lead to careers being ruined, to people who may have had no communist ties being accused of communism and having their lives essentially ruined by the accusations of the senator and his position. And this is going to amplify those effects of the second Red Scare, of this fear of communism, because you're going to have Senator McCarthy pulling people out, putting on the public stage, saying this person is a communist. And people are going to read the news and see this and say, there are communists in our country. There are communists in our midst, around us. And it's going to amplify this fear that almost anyone could be communist. Because remember, communism is an idea. It does not have a skin color. There's no easy way to identify who's a communist. And so almost anyone could be a communist. And so Senator McCarthy can almost get away with accusing anyone of communism. But he does have an issue, and it is going to fall apart when he starts accusing those in our military of communism. Because at this time, even though we're afraid of the military, of communism, we were proud of our military, and we did not want those in our military who were serving to protect us being accused of communism, of being insulted. And so when he starts pursuing those in our military, this is when his career is going to start falling apart, when McCarthyism is going to start falling apart, and you are going to start to see Joseph McCarthy kind of fade away as his career itself becomes in tatters due to his zealous accusations of going after people on false accusations. And so Joseph McCarthy's career is going to come to an end. Now, the Interstate Highway Act. Now, this is going to be the foundation for all these highways and interstates we have across the country. We have President Eisenhower, who had been commander in Europe, leading this. And what he's going to do is he's going to say, we need a way to quickly respond to any threat in the United States. And so one way to do this will be to build highways, to connect all corners of our country by road. That way, if one part of the country gets attacked, we can quickly respond to it from any other part of the country. So if we're invaded in California, we can hit the highway in Georgia and quickly move over to defend California. And so what this is going to do is, while it was designed as a way to protect us, as a way for our military to respond to threats in our country, it is going to really help the lives of all Americans, as now Americans have easy ways to get across from one part of the country to another. This is going to lead to people taking more vacations. This is going to lead to people being able to move around more, to move to places where they are more comfortable, to find new jobs. And this is going to stimulate the economy as well, just as the GI Bill did. Because what's going to happen is, now that you have all these highways, well, guess what? At almost every exit, guess what? There's going to be a gas station opened up. Well, now you've got all these gas stations opening up. Well, now you've got people servicing those gas stations. You're going to have hotels popping up around these exits. And so there's going to be a car culture being developed of people traveling across the country and needing to be served as they go across the country, as they go from one place to another. And so you are going to have, just as the GI Bill is going to pump money into the economy and create jobs, these highways are going to pump money and jobs into the economy as we now have a new part of our society to service, to serve those people traveling along these highways, traveling across the country, getting off these exits. They're going to need to be served, and that is going to create jobs and create wealth in our country. Now, also during this time, we are going to have the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Board of Education. And so this, of course, we have, the question of whether or not it was constitutional to have schools being segregated. Was separate but equal constitutional? Was it something that actually worked? Remember, Plessy versus Ferguson is going to establish the idea of separate but equal, that as long as there are two facilities that are equal to one another, that segregation was constitutional, that you could have white people and people of color being segregated, of being separated. Well, this question is going to come up once again, whether or not it was constitutional to have segregation in schools. Is segregation in education equal? And so the question is brought up, and it is going to be decided that no, having separate schools cannot be equal, that there will always be one school that is receiving more funding, more resources, better treatment, what have you, than another, if they are separated. And so this is going to really start the process of ending segregation, of integrating schools, that to ensure that everybody received an equal education, that you had to integrate to bring everybody together, to ensure that we are in the same school working together to the same goal of becoming education and developing our learners. And so that brings us to element C, to examine the influence of Sputnik on U.S. technological innovations in education. So really, we're just looking, how does Sputnik, and we'll talk about what Sputnik is in a moment, how does Sputnik really drive innovations in our technology, and how does it drive education in our country? And so this is really going to spur the space race, right? Sputnik, this picture on the left, that is a Soviet satellite. Now, this is going to be the first object that is sent into space. It is going to be the first satellite sent into space, something that we have some type of control over, some way to measure. And so this is going to terrify the United States. Once again, there should be a common theme of the United States feeling fearful, of under threat, because that's how the United States felt. We were terrified of everything, because every way we looked, it seemed like the Soviet Union was ahead of us, that they were winning. Remember, it is a competition between capitalism and communism, and it seemed as though the Soviet Union was ahead, that they were winning this competition. And so, when Sputnik is launched into space, well, now Americans go out and look at the night sky. They think, are the Soviets watching us? Are the Soviets putting weapons above us? Are the Soviets, planning something to harm us? And so this is once again going to terrify us. What are they doing in space? Why haven't we got a satellite in space? And this is going to spur the United States to action, to do something to catch up to the Soviet Union. And so the way we react to Sputnik is, first, we're going to create NASA. We're going to create NASA as a way of developing the technology to go into space, to compete with the Soviet Union. We're also going to go and pass the National Defense Education Act. We're going to go and this is where we're going to start spending more time of our school going and educating students on math and science, because we are going to need new scientists to develop the technology to get us into space, to keep up with the Soviet Union, to ensure that as we go through into the future, that we have the people and the education and the resources to get ahead of the Soviet Union. Because again, We don't just want to catch up. It is a competition. And so we have to not only catch up, but to get ahead. And the only way to do that is to invest in our education to ensure that we have scientists being developed and brought out to fight in this Cold War. And so that is it for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much.